for the home team. Speaking of which, I know there's a big football game today as well. And you'll be out in plenty of time to get to the game. Isn't that great? So as we've been on our soul trek this year, in August, as you know, we covered the edge, and we asked each other, what is that place that is a stretch for us? What is the edge to move beyond our comfort zone? And when we began in August, we were celebrating the Emoji Group, and Pat Forrest came up and spoke, and she grabbed me a couple Sundays ago, and she said, you know, Karen, that was my edge right there, was to come up and to tell that story. A group of us, as you know, went ziplining, some of us went karaokeing, some of us went Nia dancing, and I'm sure that every single one of us, if you hadn't done anything to push you to the edge, at least you thought about it maybe, right? So what we're looking at this month is, you know, standing on the edge, and then you have to take a leap, right? So we're focused this month on the leap, and last time I spoke, a couple weeks ago, we recognized that small steps can actually lead to a leap in consciousness. And sometimes we don't even notice the leaps that we have taken in our lives until we look back, right? I mean, you're like, whoa, how did this happen? Or where did I get here? And it's like, it seems like an all of a sudden thing, but the truth is it's small steps lead to a leap. Leaps also require faith. And when we are venturing off into a leap, and the truth is that we don't know what the outcome will be, do we? Sharon Salzberg says that when we take a step, then that path is then lit for us but it's dark. And so we take the step, and then there's the light. We take the step, and then there's the light. And we keep going through that, and that is using our faith faculty. I have asked for stories from our community regarding the edges and the leaps that you have taken in your life. And so Jay Thompson shared with me a story a couple of weeks ago. So Jay, I'm sure you'll correct me if I don't get the story completely right. But Jay went to Hawaii to present a workshop, and the workshop was called Tapping into Bliss. He does the EFT, the tapping workshop. Now, most of the time he gets his expenses covered, but that wasn't the case in this place. He had to pay his own airfare and hotel, and so he found that after he bought his plane ticket that, you know, there really wasn't enough room for lodging, and for those of you who have been to Hawaii, you know it can get pretty expensive. He said that sometimes he's gone there for a week and spent a couple $1,000s. But what Jay did is he set an intention. He set an intention, and his intention was that he would find a comfortable place to stay for the whole week for $200 or less, including food. Now, this is in Hawaii. So, being Jay, he's at the airport at SeaTac getting ready to fly to Hawaii, and he began talking with people. Can't imagine that, right? Jay, you're one of the friendliest people I know. And as he was talking with this fellow passenger who was on this flight, they got to talking, and she gave him a ride from the airport to the Unity Church in Hawaii. And when he got to the Unity Church in Hawaii, he ran into somebody from Seattle Unity, who used to go here, who was a good friend of Robbie Fonstock's from the Course in Miracle group. And she said that she knew a place right near the church where he could rent a room for a week for, guess what? For $200, right? And so Jay said that he ended up playing golf. I'll just share with him. He said, I had a great presentation. I sold some books. I did one-on-one sessions. I played golf that were all a block from where I stayed for 1 week for under $200. Now, the thing is that Jay visualized, I'll just read directly from his email. He said, before leaving Seattle, I visualized a person handing me the key to my room. And that's exactly what happened. I felt the key in my hand while using an EFT technique that was part of my presentation. So that's a great example, and thank you for sharing that, Jay. It's a great example of a leap of faith, isn't it? It's a part of our life. And so when we look at some of the steps that he took, that he set his intention, that he visualized it, and then guess what? We can set all the intentions and visualize till the cows come home, but we need to take action. And he got on that plane, even though he wasn't sure where he was going to stay or how much it was going to cost when he got there. And that is taking a leap. So a leap takes concentrated effort. It requires commitment and faith. And the truth is, in life, sometimes instead of a leap, we take a fall. Anybody ever taken a fall? Where a leap is intentional, a fall is something that appears to just happen. It is usually unplanned, and it happens or appears to happen to us rather than from us. Now, the thing is, falling can be a wonderful thing, such as falling in love. It can be a horrible thing, like falling apart, and it can be an ordinary thing, like falling asleep. But illness, divorce, job loss, loss of a loved one, these are all what I would call falling leaps. In other words, we've all had them. You're heading down a road and all of a sudden something happens and the world kind of falls out from under you, right? And yet what happens during those falling leaps is you end up on a different path that you wouldn't have been on otherwise, right? I mean, the path that you're on right now has occurred through a great deal of experiences, some of them through intentional leaps and some of them through falling leaps. And I would be remiss if I didn't, in this story, also talk about the original fall, the fall of man and women. But I'm going to give it the unity perspective. So you all know the story. Adam and Eve are in the Garden of Eden and everything's just wonderful. You know, they're having this great time. And then Eve gets visited by the servant who tells her to eat of the fruit of good and evil. And she's like, well, I'm not supposed to. But, you know, when you're told not to do something, it's usually the first thing you end up doing. So she did and gave it to Adam. And so their eyes were opened, right? Their eyes were opened. And all of a sudden, they see duality. And in the book of Genesis, chapter 3, verse 22, then the Lord God said, behold, the man has become like one of us, knowing good and evil. And now, lest he put forth his hand and take also the tree of life and then live forever, well, therefore God sent him forth from the Garden of Eden to till the ground from which he was taken. And so the story goes that now we have to toil and women are suffering in childbirth, and that's how that whole story is explained. But so the fall, so we enter into this experience. We're in the Garden of Eden where we are aware of our oneness with God. We're living from that place. And then there is this fall that happens. One of the stories that I have heard that has always stayed with me is the idea that we are divine spirits, and that we were sort of playing around with the material world, and we would jump into the material world and then we'd jump out and, oh, this is kind of fun, let's get in the material thing. And then guess what happened one day? We got stuck and we couldn't get out, and it became our fall. If you think about the great falling leaps that we take in our lives, what are they? They're falling into the body and being born, and they're falling out of the body and dying, isn't it? I've shared this story before, but it really hits me when I look at that story in the book of Genesis. So when I was really little, like 2 or 3 or whatever, my parents would send us outside to play in the yard. And we had a very small yard, and in Chicago they have this space between 2 houses, and it's called a gangway. And I remember very clearly being bundled up in my coat, my hat, and then my parents just setting me outside and said, go out and play, but stay in the yard. And so I remember very clearly standing in the gangway, and it was cold so I could see my breath, and just watching my breath going in and out. And then all of a sudden I became so aware of my breath that I think I began to hyperventilate a little bit. And then I thought, wait a minute, what is this breath and how is this happening and what is happening? And I wanted to get out. And I remember trying to literally jump over here, just jump. I just wanted to get out. And then I couldn't. I kept trying to jump and I couldn't. And I stopped and I started pulling at my face. And just this whole realization that I was stuck, that I couldn't get out, that I was stuck in this body. And I remember it so clearly that it's burned in my memory of that moment. And when I look at the story of Genesis, it's the fall that we all experience, isn't it? It's that fall into this physical body, and then we go in the opposite direction where we think this is all there is this dimension and this body and this material realm, and we forget about the other side until we have to fall again, only now we're falling to the other side. Right now, the leaves are preparing to drop. The autumn equinox is a couple of days away. Right now, day and night are equal in length. The Celtics would call this the in-between place. It is a place of transition. It is a place of power. It is a place of doorways. It is said to be where, again, where like power lies, like the edge of a forest or the shoreline. And so I think it's important that we're aware of the seasons, that we're aware of this equal light and dark in this hemisphere right now, because we can use this time of year as an opportunity to explore where we may be out of balance and use this time to restore it. The leaves falling is a season of letting go. And letting go is part of a falling leap. Okay, so the Buddhists are really good at this, right? It's kind of one of their basic teachings. They're always teaching us about letting go and releasing. And they teach us that it's important to practice generosity, because generosity prepares, when we're always letting go, releasing, whether it be our possessions or our breath or whatever it is we're releasing, again, we're preparing for that great letting go. I think it's amazing that we get to fall asleep every night, because we have this wonderful practice of just falling asleep and releasing and letting go. When my kids were little, we had a neighbor across the street that they played with, and there was a birthday party, and I, for some reason, ended up taking, his name was Nathan, and he was 6. I ended up driving alone with him to the party. And as we're driving in the car, he said to me, he goes, "Can I tell you something that I've never told anybody?" And I said, "Sure." And of course, you're thinking, uh-oh. And he's like, well, he goes, "It's something that I do that's just really weird." And I'm like, okay. And he goes, "But you won't tell anybody." I'm like, "No, I won't tell anybody." What's he going to say? And he said, "It's the strangest thing, but sometimes I'll be like sitting in a chair or laying down, and all of a sudden, I'm gone, and I'm asleep. And I don't know when it's going to happen, and it just happens. It happens at night." And it was this great revelation for him that he fell asleep when he went to bed at night. He fell asleep when he was supposed to take a nap, and for some reason he thought he was the only one on the planet that this happened to. He didn't realize that this was like something that we all did, we fall asleep. But for him it was like this amazing, miraculous, unique event that didn't happen to anybody else. And I was like, you know what, I think it happened. that message with each other. It's a definite falling leap that they are experiencing right now. Last week, Paul Hasselbeck spoke here, and he did a 12-power class and another class during the week. And Paul is, I think, kind of like a unity, Fillmorian fundamentalist, absolutist, maybe. And we need our absolutists, we need our fundamentalists of whatever religion we may be, because it carries the rest of us. Because I don't know about you, but one of the things that I have noticed is that our message, which is about 120 years old, unity's about 120 years old, has kind of gone mainstream, really. I mean, you can watch Joyce Meyer or Joel Osteen or whatever, and you'll find that the message they're giving is pretty much the message that we've been giving for over 120 years. And what I found with Paul Hasselbeck being here last week is he's like, all right, I want to take you like another step further. I want to take you into a bit of a different place, particularly in our prayers. And so he has been kind of, can I have one of the bulletins? He has been kind of rewriting some of our prayers, and I taught a prayer class this week that asked us to, now in unity we recognize that we're not begging and we're not pleading when we pray to God, that we're speaking the affirmative word from a place of divinity. However, our languaging can get a little bit dualistic, if you will, right? So one of the examples is, and it's in your bulletin, it's with the prayer of protection that we say every Sunday, right? And I just added a couple of tweaks at the end of it that Paul has suggested. So if you look at this prayer, the light of God surrounds you, the love of God enfolds you, the power of God protects you, the presence of God watches over you, wherever you are, God is. It's a good prayer, right? We say it every Sunday. But doesn't it sort of put God out there, that God's out there kind of looking down at us and blessing us, and that's okay. But if we believe in our unity principles that we are divine beings, then why are we calling it in? I find there's a balance between the two. So I'd like you to say this with me right now, all of it. So the light of God surrounds you. I am light. The love of God enfolds you. I am love. The power of God protects you. I am power. The presence of God watches over you. I am presence. Now, I suppose a better way to do this would be the light of God surrounds us, I am light, or the light of God surrounds me, I am light, you are light. So how does this hit you? You don't have to answer me, but just look at this, because when I look at this and it's like, I am light, yeah, I can go with that. I am love, I can go with that. But what about I am power? I am power. What if you walked around going, hey, I am power? People would think maybe that you're a little nuts, right? Not really. Okay. So what I'm calling from us, and this is a book called How to Pray Without Talking to God. It's in our bookstore too, where she kind of takes some of the prayers apart and looks at them in that way, is to just watch your languaging and to watch when you're speaking the word and when you're praying, if you're coming from a place of divinity or whether you're coming from a place of God's out there and maybe God's going to hear us. So I'd like for us to actually practice the I am statements when we close our service. I think that collectively right now, we are in a falling leap. We are in a falling leap. And it's something that we haven't chosen, and yet here it is. We've had the warmest summer on record, and I mean, really, can you believe it's, like I said, it's 82 degrees out there, and it's September, and it's been a beautiful summer for us, but it doesn't bode well for the rest of the planet. So today there are massive rallies happening around the world. Did you know that? For climate change. There's 161 countries that are hosting massive rallies. Apparently at the US-Canadian border, people will link hands to show that climate change has no border. And in New York at 12:58 p.m., which is probably right about now in New York, there will be a moment of silence And there are thousands of people who are marching today. There will be a moment of silence, and the silence is going to be followed by a blare of noise, which is a symbolic sounding of the alarm on climate change, says the New York Times. The noise will be horns, whistles, cell phone alarms, and more than 20 marching bands and tolling church bells will contribute to this cacophony. Only in New York, huh? They know how to do it. Why didn't we think of that? So, you know, we fell from the consciousness of oneness with the fall of man. But now we are falling in a different way because we can't live on a planet that isn't sustainable. So we're kind of experiencing our second fall, right? And yet we know that small steps lead to great leaps. And leaps take intention, faith, commitment, just like what Jay did when he went to Hawaii. He had his specific steps. Some leaps come to us unbidden, like divorce, illness, loss of a job, climate change. And yet these falling leaps put us on a different path that we wouldn't have otherwise been on. Again, what have been some of your falling leaps in your life? And what about this falling leap that we are collectively engaged in right now? I believe that we are making a great leap in consciousness right now. We have made many great leaps just in my lifetime. For those of you who are 60 and over, when you look back, like, even if you're 50 and over, you look back like 40, 50 years, hasn't the world changed? I mean drastically, and for the better. Okay, maybe not all for the better. The world's coming to an end with climate change, but hey, just a small thing. No. Other than that, I find that people are more loving and kind. I find that things that were kept hidden and secret when I was a child, and some of the abuse that took place, yes, it still takes place today, but not on the scale that it did. And I find that the world is a much better and compassionate and kind place, and awake place. Again, the unity teachings used to be like this big secret, like this big weird secret. Now you can get it on television with Oprah. You can get it anywhere. But we're ready for another great leap. And I think this march today can only build as we reach a tipping point in the collective. So putting all this together in bringing it to an end. So we've talked about what if we spoke our prayers? What if we made our affirmations? Not from God is here and maybe God will work through us and it'll work, but what if we spoke from that place of divine presence? What does that sound like? And we can coach each other in that. So let's just close our eyes for a moment. And I can just hear New York with all the noise, the alarm that is sounding. But we go to a place deep within. Actually, that was an hour ago, but. And I invite you to breathe from your divine self. Not the body, not the soul, but from your divinity. The divine presence. I am divine presence. And divine presence, divine healing moves through every living being on this planet. Divine presence is who we are. From human to animal to bird to the trees. We are collectively one. So I invite you to speak a word from your divine self of blessing to this planet, to this situation. Just, you can say it out loud, but quietly. I see a great leap in consciousness taking place. That the right people are coming together, igniting in one another the right solutions, the right action steps, and the right intentions. That we look back on this time 50 years from now and we go, wow, that was quite a leap that was taken. That was quite a leap in consciousness that happened. And we do affirm this through the power that dwells within all beings. And it is so. Amen.